This is the sidewalk. Here's how the story goes. The day after the fire, the engineers stepped forward. They said, hey, this would be a great time to deal with a problem. We have a town below sea level with this huge cliff. Let's knock down that cliff. Have a flat, normal city. The merchants who owned this land were like, wait a minute. How long might that take? Well, the engineers calculated, 10, 12 years. The merchants were like, forget about it. We need to get back to work. This is the port. Come up with a bolder plan. And they did. They threw pilings into the mud, started building these buildings here with duplicate entranceways. On this level, the below sea level level, so they could stay in business, and the one they're heading up to. Then they started building these walls here. They're 4 feet thick at the bottom, they're 2 feet thick at the top, and maybe, most importantly, the water lines and the sewer lines were built into the walls themselves. Now, of course, there's a space just like this one, a mirror image on the other side, but between those two walls, not much, which was excellent for the people building. Everybody had a dumpster next door. All your scrap wood, broken wheelbarrow, dead horse. And then they started using this technique they were using in gold mining called hydraulic sluicing, taking powerful hoses into that hillside, and like a controlled mudslide, they filled these walls up to the top. So the roads are all solid, right? Buildings, walls, filled the walls solid, and then before they could do this, over the top, the city ran out of money. And there we were, broke with a city that looked like a waffle. Right? We're down here in the syrup part, you got your waffle ridge right here. The roads were higher than the sidewalks. We didn't know what to do. Here's what we did. We put ladders at the corners to cross the street. At each corner there were ladders, 8 to 32-foot ladders. Now nobody died in the Great Seattle Fire, but we had 17 people die crossing the street. Mostly this is guys going from one bar to another bar. They called that the one-step program. You have to imagine you're down here, you're doing your shopping. Not only when you're done shopping, you have to carry whatever you buy up a ladder, but if you're down here, you've got wagons rolling up there. If something falls out of that wagon, ouch. If something falls out of that horse, ooh. It's an ugly, stinking mess. And really, the only way you could get away with it was because this was the frontier and therefore a bachelor town. They took a census in the 1880s. There were 25,000 people in Seattle. Of them, only 1 in 10 were single ladies. And almost every single one of them lived right down here in this 3-block area right next to Skid Road. And all of them listed their profession as seamstress. This was a code word of the day, right? If you knew the code, you knew what was going on. Arthur Denny, who lived on top of the hill, was what they called a blue nose. Didn't smoke, didn't drink, didn't have a clue. He was like seamstress. Well, let's form a committee, we'll count sewing machines, tax them, pay for our sidewalks. Well, they came down here and counted. Out of 2,511 seamstresses, not one sewing machine. Arthur figures it out. He wants to run them out of town. The merchants are like, nah, this is good for business. Let's tax them instead. And that's what they did. When this town first started, 89% of the city's budget came from sin taxes. Liquor, gambling, and sewing. And that's how we got the sidewalks overhead. Now you have to ignore these gray beams. They were added later for support, right? The ones above, though, sink into the business. They sink in the retaining wall. You have the very strong and ancient technology of the Roman arch, putting all the weight on the beam, much, much stronger than going straight across. And then right down the middle where the wood is, skylights. Thick metal grates with glass inside to bring on down the light. You guys have any construction questions? Make some sense? Every once in a while someone will ask, hey Dan, where'd you get this idea? Well, we learned from Sacramento. They came out of the river. Sacramento learned from Boston, Boston from London, London from Paris, and so forth. This kind of construction is truly ancient. I had a guy on my tour last summer from the city of Istanbul. He was like this. Yeah, we got this. Just like that. The Romans figured out a long time ago water flows best over great distances at about an 18% grade. That's what that road is at. No coincidence. Right? Now, is there anybody here from Tacoma, Washington? Because this is when I'm going to tell you that story. And if there is someone from Tacoma, I will tell it slightly differently. But since there's not, we'll have some fun. Now, they are built the same way that we are, in the sense they have a deep harbor and a low mountain pass to the east. If you could get that railroad hookup from Chicago, this land you got for free would be worth a fortune. That's why we chose this spot, right? Now, since this is a rivalry story, when I say Tacoma, you guys boo. All right, let's practice. Tacoma. In the late 1800s, railroad barons had enormous power. And what they'd do is find a town out west, buy land near that town, have the railroad stop in their town, and the earlier town would become a ghost town. It happened all the way across the west. And that's what one guy out of Philadelphia tried to do to Seattle. Clarence Barrow Wright III bought Tacoma. He printed the headline in his paper that said grass will grow in the streets of Seattle. He printed up railroad maps and schedules that didn't have Seattle on them, and it was on. People left here to build up that town. At a certain point, more people lived there than here. We were in trouble. They're called the City of Destiny, built out of stone with East Coast money. We're the scrappy little frontier town built out of wood. Huge holes are open in the middle of our street. We're in trouble. Arthur Denny, who had crossed the Oregon Trail, broke down and cried. Now, luckily enough for us, but unlucky enough for one guy, a knife fight breaks out down there. A guy goes down for the king. It's a corporate town owned by one man. The bars are shut down. And at the time, this is a logging area. You get 80, 100 guys off of work. They want to party. They're not going there. They're coming here. This town became the Las Vegas of the Northwest. There was more liquor, gambling, and sewing right here than anywhere else. And that's what held us on in the 1880s. We got coal, 1890s, we're rebuilding, and then in 1897, we had our first real boom. We basically had three. Currently Microsoft, before that Boeing, but the one that made this town was 1897 when a ship rolled into the harbor and inside, a ton of gold. The Klondike Gold Rush was on, and supplying those miners headed north, turned this little lumber town into the biggest city around. All because some miners needed alterations. Hey guys, as we take this right turn here, we're walking back inside a building. We know we're back inside when we no longer have these arches, right? The arches mean we're under the sidewalks. Come on up, everybody.